Good afternoon, everybody. We really thank you for joining us here today. Is it the last one of the day? Probably for many of you. If not, if there's another one, thank you still for joining us here. My name is Alvarez, and if this is not working, let me know. I'm the Director of Wellbeing at Stanford Emergency Medicine. And
hi, I'm Nicole Battaglioli. I'm an Assistant Professor of Emergency Medicine at Emory. And I'm going to be quite honest, I'm a stand-in today.
Yes, COVID happened, and Dr. Kanapiki, and really this is her lecture, so it's one of those things that you will be learning from us, even though Dr. Kanapiki is really the expert. So a few things that you can do, tweet about her. You can find her at Kanapiki or at 1440doctor. She's published a ton about work-life harmony. And so today we're going to try to channel our inner Dr. Jennifer Kanapiki.
Yes, and I'm going to try to do her justice. So let her know how I'm doing, okay? All right, so take a look. Take a look at this tree. And I'm sure that your life feels like this tree sometimes, very twisty, turny, lots of bends. How many of you in here feel like you have multiple roles? You wear numerous different hats, right? And when you feel super overwhelmed, you don't feel like things are maybe going exactly as planned, sometimes you get the advice of, oh, you just need to work on your work-life balance. Has anybody ever gotten that advice before? Yeah, same, right? So today what we're actually going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about why striving for work-life balance is not, it doesn't really work, right? And maybe we can think about trying to purposefully plan something more meaningful and something better by actually basing how we plan our life on our priorities and our values. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and hopefully give you some tangible tools on how you can purposefully plan the life that you actually want to live. So to first, we're going to build this trunk and these roots, and we're going to do that by tearing apart the myth of work-life balance.
You'll see the theme of trees and plants. Dr. Kanapika was really all about this. It's great.
Okay. So while we're all really elusive to sort of this like work-life balance, we strive for it, and we're constantly fighting between our work commitments and our commitments at home. Many of us fail in this quest to find true balance, right? And constantly searching for this and coming up short can actually sort of drive us towards or factor into burnout for those of us who continually strive for this every day. If you think about work-life balance, that's what it is. It's like the scale. You're looking for balance, and that in of itself sort of gives you the feeling of, well, if one aspect of things is out of balance and I try to fix that, I actually have to take away from the other side in order to balance things back out. So what if we think about things as more of a work-life harmony? And her slide said to click, so I'm clicking. That's what it said on the other one. Please don't tweet that I'm messing up her slide set, you guys. Okay.
Hashtag self-compassion. We don't know what the text is showing up there in the title, but it looked great last time.
It looked really great last night. That's okay.
Older version of the computer, things that we're learning here.
That's right. Okay, so let's think about work-life harmony instead, right? If you think about harmony, it's actually, the definition is a pleasing arrangement of its parts. Doesn't that sound a lot nicer than trying to balance your life? Like, what if you could pleasingly arrange your life by its parts, right? Wouldn't that feel nicer, right? So what if we think about harmony? Because if work-life balance is thinking about the how am I going to do this, when am I going to do this, where am I going to do this, harmony thinks about why am I going to do this? And that's you, right? Like, you're the trunk of your tree. Everything should kind of revolve around you and why you're doing something. Okay? And I'm going backwards. That's my problem. You guys. I'm never getting invited back again.
That is so not true. One of the things that we were supposed to cover is this idea that we have to start understanding this why that we talked about. So what is your personal mission statement? What is your vision, your values, right? Because if we start thinking of all the things that other people are telling us to do, you got to do this, you got to do that, it weighs into our time. And I can honestly tell you today was not a great day for me when it comes to balance. I'm running around from one place to another to try to catch up here. This is why we end up with this computer. No offense to whoever bought this computer, but it clearly has an old version of this PowerPoint. But that's okay, right? We're working with that. That's, for me, as harmony, because tomorrow I'll have more time for myself. But unless I know that, I can guarantee you 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I'll be terrified in front of you, like, crap. What is that text? What is this thing? I start noticing all the negative things that's happening in my work. But that's all about the what and the how. But if I talk about the why, each of you right now are here because you want to know why not just work-life balance doesn't work, but hopefully how can we figure out our own mission, vision, and values, right?
So we're moving on from debunking work-life balance, and we're going to move more into designing your life's mission and values.
Which is a nice buzzword, right? Designing your life. It makes it more innovative, Silicon Valley, right? But really, there's a book. I think that's the next slide. Let's see. One more. Yes, there's this book written by one of the designers at the D School, Designing Your Life. And instead of focusing on work and life, what if we start looking at it from, yes, there's work, but for your life part, break it down to health, love, and play. And if you think of it as gauges, then it's not just like, am I fulfilled today? But maybe I've been working a lot today, I'm giving a ton of presentations, and my play is like non-existent. I can tell you that Dr. Kalantari and I went shopping 2 days ago.
I wasn't there, I was so jealous.
That was part of my play. And because I knew that in my calendar, if you look at my calendar today, like it's all busy with like running around from meetings. But if I also put in the play part in my calendar, and I also put in the love part in my calendar, and I put in the health part in my calendar, then it starts to look like it's not just all work things that I do. And that's hopefully one of the takeaways that we can give you here.
So I see some head nodding, but I also see some of you who are just not quite convinced by what we're saying quite yet. So we're going to keep going. All right? So how many of you have actually sat and planned out and looked at what your values are? Like what's actually important to you? A good handful, right? You have to kind of look at your values and what's important to you so you know what you have to plan for and you know what you have to fit in the schedule. A book we want to recommend here, in addition to the one that Dr. Alvarez just mentioned, is called The Productivity Project by Chris Bailey. And in this book, he talks about hotspots, and hotspots are a concept for what you spend your time and energy on. Am I spending it on work? What if I take on this project, what hotspot is that reflective of? And he actually found that 90% of people have the same 7 hotspots: mind, emotions, career, relationships, body, finances, and fun. So 90% of people have a lot of these hotspots in common. So when they really look at how they want to spend their time, these are the buckets that they want to sort of put their time and their effort into. So, obviously, you guys had done this before, and as a latecomer to this presentation, I decided to do this as well. And I sat down and kind of jotted, okay, what are my values, and how do they fit into these buckets, and how have I actually been practicing this, let's say, over the last year, right? It's been a hard couple of years. How are we, getting back on track, whatever that means? So let's say for mind, I've gotten back into reading books for fun. You guys, I don't know if you do this, read books for fun. Non-medical books that are written by fascinating people of a fiction nature. It's fantastic, okay? And that's how I take care of my mind. Finances. Y'all, I refinanced my loans. I am not eligible for this public loan student forgiveness plan. I got to figure out the old-fashioned way to pay off these loans. So refinancing or doing whatever I need to do to make sure my finances are in check, right? But if you don't do that, if you don't plan something around your finances or how you're going to take care of your mind or your body, what's the likelihood that it's actually going to get done? Okay? So now that hopefully we have convinced you that maybe it's worth spending some time thinking about what's important to you and maybe designing your life around those values instead of chasing this illusion of balance, we want to give you some tangible tools for how you can maybe implement putting these values and putting these practices to work, okay? I'm
Now we're going to go talk about some toolkits. I know there's like so many clicks.
I'm clicking the button.
There you go.
Clicking the button.
This is supposed to symbolize toolkits.
Yes. Okay, so first thing, calendar. How many of you have a to-do list where you just like incessantly write down things that you have to do? Okay, so then when you write down that to-do list, if you don't cross anything off the list, how many of you feel sad?
I don't know about sad.
Disappointed.
Disappointed.
Okay,
frustrated,
unfulfilled.
angry.
Yeah, and then you add more things to the list, and you're like, this list is so long, now it's on the second page, and right? Okay, what if it took me a little convincing, but I think I'm actually quite behind this now, and she's a master, so I should take the advice. What if we change that to calendaring, right, instead of like a to-do list? So on my to-do list I have to put in my schedule requests for the next quarter. I have to make sure that I got off all the days for the last quarter that I needed to get off. I need to send emails to fix the days that I'm working that I didn't want to be working, and then I'm going to do that's 4 things on a to-do list. Instead, maybe I should say, okay, Wednesday night from 7 to 8, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to fix my calendar and do everything that has to do with fixing my calendar, right? We have a saying in our department that if you want to get something done, schedule it. So we have scheduled writing days where people participate and they plan on writing and they bring their projects and we just sit and write, because if you don't schedule it, what's the likelihood that it gets done? Well, actually, research has shown that about 41% of the items on a to-do list never get done. So maybe try to think about your to-do list in a slightly different way. Put it into a calendar.
I will tell you the counterpoint to that is that if you start, I am not a calendar person, so I work with Dr. Kanapeki. I tell her, like, I am terrible at this. And when I talked to my coach, it was because, like, I'm not that detail-oriented, which means that for me, I get so bogged down when there's so many things that's scattered in my calendar. And so what I've learned to do is to at least pick 3 things that I need to do for that week. And so I planned that for the first day of the week. And so even though I know it's happening on Thursday, it's in the forefront of my mind, and that's how I get creative. That's how I can think about the project that I need to do that I've been procrastinating. And instead, now I know that by Thursday, I'm going to work on it.
The second suggestion is create instead of a to-do list, a not to-do list. And this speaks to my ever-loving soul, okay? So at the beginning of the week, you kind of plan out what you have to do for the week or whatever your process is. I want you to think about your to-do list that existed before. And have you ever heard of the 80-20 rule? We spend about 80% of our time on only 20% of the tasks that we have to do. That means there's a lot of stuff left over that you need to figure out a way to offload, okay? So if you need any tips or pointers, I am the queen of offloading tasks. It's my favorite thing to do, okay? Don't go shopping for yourself. Make sure all of your bills are on auto pay. Do you know what a virtual assistant is? It's a person who lives in the cloud that'll do things for you, like schedule doctor's appointments. It's fantastic. If you want to know any more about these things, please find me, because this is a passion of mine. If you don't need to be spending the mental energy on doing it, why are you doing it? I have had somebody else clean my house since I was a resident. Do you know why? Because when I try to clean my house, it takes me 8 hours, and it looks almost equally as bad as it did when I started. So I kind of think about, like, well, I can't pay somebody else to write this paper for me, although I wish that I could, because I'd much rather be cleaning my house than writing a paper. And so I pay somebody to clean my house instead, right? Think about how you're spending your time and what you can afford to offload, what you're able to offload based on where you live and your resources, but consider taking some of the smaller menial tasks off your plate if it does not bring you joy. Marie Kondo that to-do list, okay? And then lastly, we're going to empower you. I know this is not really the junior faculty thing to say, but we're going to empower you at times to say no. And you're going to think about it in this fashion. You're going to be asked to do a lot of things. You're going to be asked to take on tasks. And if you want to be doing that, if that's going to help you, help your career, if it's going to give you personal fulfillment, that's great. But that time has to come out of another bucket, whether that bucket is time for yourself, whether that bucket is time with your family. It's going to come from somewhere. So when you do decide to take something on, just remember that that time doesn't come from nowhere. That might be the difference between having dinner with your family or calling your mom or sleeping, right? So you do have to sort of think about, again, keep in mind those hot spots and if this is something that you want to be spending your time on in that moment.
And one way to do this, and I know we hate lists, is to list down all the things that you do for your department or any other work-related things so that when somebody asks you to do something, just show them that list. Like, hey, which of this can we deprioritize so I can take on that role? At least that's one way that I've said no to a boss. I'm briefly going to just cover self-compassion. For those of you who know me, I talk a lot about self-compassion, but really it's to allow you to set boundaries, for you to be able to say no. I still feel bad when I say no because of either FOMO or maybe the boss is going to get mad or whatever else reason. But at the end of the day, as Dr. Battaglioli said, a yes to something is a no to something else about usually my time, right? And so the elements of self-compassion that Kristen Neff has talked about really has three things. Mindfulness is really self-awareness. Being able to notice that, oh yeah, I said yes again, and now I'm like hating myself for that. In that moment when you get that realization, that moment that you're like, ugh, I just did that uncomfortable moment, just know that there's that common humanity, that you're not alone in that experience actually. And so if you're the clever person that will say, actually let me think about that more, or can I get back to you on that? So even that pause can help you decide and reevaluate like which ones are you going to say yes to or no to. And really goes back to self-kindness. You have to be kind to yourself. You can't say yes to everything. And again, I'm a terrible role model for that today. And at the same time, like for me, at some point, at some level, it brings me joy. But one of the things that I use is the power of perspectives. That typos that we see in the presentation, in 5 years, you won't remember that. But one of the cool things that I'll remember is I get to talk with you, with Dr. Battaglioli, right? So that means a lot for me. And so find out those whys. And also, when you take on projects, at least do it with people that you love. If that other person does not spark joy, find another way to like work with other teams with another project that may also push you to advance your career and also answer your why. I think this is a summary, which is being kind to yourself eventually will let you notice that your tank is empty in each of those fun, play, love, or health. And love here can be your time with your friends, with your family. It cannot only be just work, because oftentimes when we think of our tank is empty, it's too late. And even then, we're like, well, but if I just stay an hour later in my shift, I can finish my charts. And if I do this, right? Find out other ways to either delegate certain things or be okay with, you know what, my charts are going to be crap today. My RVU is going to be not so good this month. But that's okay. And that's part of, I think, setting your boundaries and understanding what your why is. And so with that, there is a QR code. I just changed the letters of this, so it may not work. But we will see. Somebody will correct us. And I think we have 1 minute left before this talk ends. Oh, yay, it works. Look at that. Technology, yes, that's a win.
Does anybody have any questions or thoughts? Has anybody like recently revamped their life in an amazing way?
I don't know if anybody, Katrin Tyler from UC Davis, I don't know if anybody else has read the book 4,000 Weeks.
4,000 Weeks?
Mm-mm.
I have not.
Tell us more.
It's so it's written by this guy who used to be like a productivity guru, and then he sort of had this come to Jesus moment and realized that 4,000 weeks is an 80-year-old lifespan, and so it's actually all you get. And so choosing how you spend your time is, anyway, it's a really fascinating read, really easy read, and I listened to it on Audible, highly recommend it.
I love that. Two things. It gives you perspective if you know how much time left you have. And number two, you can offload that. You don't have to read. You can listen to it as you're driving. Totally. There's another book about energy management as opposed to time management, because it's really not just about time, it's your energy.
Mm-hmm.
If you're exhausted and clearly you're done, like you can have more time, but if you're exhausted, you can't really do more.
And taking a nap and self-care is doing something,
Yes.
contrary to what we may all believe in this room.
Just a comment. One of the things I did as a medical student was prioritizing my to-do list. One of the things I did as a medical student was prioritizing my to-do list. So instead of just having a list of 20 things to do, I had an A, a B, and a C category. And so A was things I had to get done that day or that was due tomorrow morning. B's were things I needed to get to if I had time, and C's were things that if I didn't get to it, I didn't get to it, and it was what it was. And then kind of as my calendar part of it was just keeping track of the due dates, and so C's eventually became A's, but it kind of took off that pressure of, I didn't finish my to-do list today. That's okay. It'll roll to the next day, and it kind of helped me stay motivated and keep up with everything I was doing.
Mm-hmm. I'm a big proponent of the get shit done method, where I have a to-do list, but I pick 3 things every day that I have to get done. I write it on a card. So, and then it's
And
the
I
like
celebrate
Scott
that.
Weingart,
Yes, I
like
just
the
did
back of
number
it.
one.
Yeah, then I write notes on the back of the card. So,
Every once in a while, you make a cheat sheet of 10 things you can do in an hour.
yeah.
You feel super accomplished.
Yeah.
Checked off.
Or like write down like some fake things that you can cross off because it feels so good. One of my favorite things like with the Zoom meetings is like you're auto invited to stuff. The ability to like click no, decline for those like meetings that I don't need to be sparks joy, right?
I started doing that with Microsoft, like with work meetings on Office, and I don't know if people interpret it as passive aggressive or as like, no, I'm not coming to that meeting. I just thought you should know. I don't know, but I
We're still
enjoy
here,
it.
Clearly, we still have a job.
Yeah, I haven't been fired yet.
I will be remiss if I don't mention Dr. Teresa Chen, who's here as well. She is, I think, like one of the experts in finding time to do things and really, really well. So look her up on Twitter, social media. Again, Dr. Kanapiki has done a lot of work on this again, and really we are 2 minutes past the time that we're allotted. So thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
And again, for the record, because this is recorded, I just want to acknowledge Dr. Nicole Battaglioli for taking the time to learn all the things that we have to do to be here. She really is an expert on this, so it was a very natural, easy way to get her to be part of this.
Thank you.